Peggy Larsen is the Senior Vice President of Customers and Community Relations at WCF, and she's been there since 1995. She's responsible for communication, advertising, and the WCF Foundation. She has been involved in the insurance industry for more than 40 years. I didn't know how you could do that at 36 years of age, but she has done that. Oh, well, even that would make her 50, and the math doesn't work for me. So Ms. Larsen, or Peggy as she prefers to be called, has completed her associate in risk management and is a certified insurance counselor, chartered property casualty underwriter, and certified workers' compensation professional. She is also the president of Univantage Insurance Solutions. That was her professional CV that I received. It was quite modest. Many go on for much longer. I asked her about her personal life, and she told me about several things, and then I asked her to prioritize them in order of importance in her life. So with that priority, I will tell you something about her. She has 1 husband, 9 grandchildren, 2 dogs, and 4 sons. Will you join me in inviting Peggy to the stage?
Well, thanks so much. I'm glad that none of those people that he just mentioned are in this crowd today, because each one of them would expect to be at the top of that priority list, right? Especially the dogs. And I'm not sure that they're not at the top, because every day when you get home, they're wagging their tail and they're happy to see you, right? Can't say that for my husband and the rest of the family. But anyway, I'm really excited to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me, and what a great group. So impressive to know that you don't have to be here, but you are. That's pretty fun. I have this program that I do every year up at another university, and where I take high school juniors and seniors up there and spend a week with them. And I always am really impressed with them as well, that they're taking a week out of their summer, you know, to go up there and learn something instead of hanging around the pool, which is what I did as a kid. And I didn't have those kind of programs available to me because I was raised in kind of a crappy little town. How many of you have ever heard of Barstow, California? Oh, so you must have been driving from Vegas to LA or something, and that's why you know Barstow. But yeah, it wasn't a great place to be raised, and certainly we didn't have any type of facility like this, or even a program for young people. So that just led to what you do when you have a lot of time on your hands. You get in a lot of trouble. So that's a story for another day. But today, I was asked to talk about leadership. And so, being the old person that I am, I've been exposed to a lot of leaders in my life, and some of them I consider to be amazing, great leaders, and some of them, even though they were leaders of companies that I worked for or was involved with, not so great. I mean, I wouldn't consider them to be leaders at all. And I always used to ponder on how some of these individuals could be, you know, in the positions that they are as CEOs, because a lot of the traits that they had, not that great. But I wanted to just ask you, first off, what leaders, when you think of leadership or a leader, what name just like pops into your mind? Does anybody have somebody? None of you have any leaders that pop? Yep. Who?
Lincoln.
Lincoln. And why did that pop into your mind?
Because I watched a movie recently.
Okay. And do you consider that he was a good leader?
Yes.
Yeah. You know, what's interesting, I had taken a group from work one time to Washington, D.C., and we were going to all the different monuments in D.C., and we were sitting at the Lincoln Memorial, sort of just sitting there pondering Lincoln and our forefathers and how lucky we were, right, that we had them. And I asked this group, I said, this isn't very long ago, but I asked them, I said, what's the last political leader that you can think of? Who do you think of when you think of the last political leader? What do you think they said? JFK. JFK? I know, that's what I would have thought. But interesting that almost every single one of them, the last political leader that they could think of was Reagan. And so I thought, well, you know, that's kind of a sad state of affairs for us, right? That's been a long time ago. So, but, you know, I would have thought of Kennedy as well, and there's others that I would have thought about, but that's what they all had to say, and so that's interesting. But I have a couple of leaders that always come to my mind when I think about leadership, and so I wanted to just share a couple of those with you. So everybody knows this guy, right? And he's now, I just read this, he's now the second richest man in the world, on the planet. Who passed him? Yeah, but what I really love about Bill Gates, not really what he did with Microsoft, that's huge, and other things that he's done. I mean, I just read recently that he's trying to come up with a software to detect early onset Alzheimer. So that's, pretty cool that he's trying to, make a difference there. But what I really love about him is him and Warren Buffett actually together, they decided that they were going to each give at 1/2 of their income, of their earnings, to make a difference in the world, to help others. So that's what I love about him, because he hasn't made it just about him. Yeah, he has $1 bazillion. How would that be, right? I mean, that's like my dream job. If I could have that kind of money, that I could just sit around every day and decide what I'm going to do with it and what difference I can make in people's lives. But he didn't have to do that. And so, I think that's pretty cool. The other one that always comes to my mind is, we just already talked about him. And what I think is really cool about him is he wasn't like born into being a political leader, right? I mean, he was an actor. He was an actor. But he did some really great, amazing things, and I just liked the type of person that he was. And so that's really what's come to light for me, is what great leaders mean. It isn't necessarily what they've accomplished or what they've done. It's really who they are. That's what's been important to me. And I want to share a story with you about our company. So this is just what so workers' compensation fund, let me tell you about that a little bit first so you just understand what it is. Workers' compensation fund, what we do, we're an insurance company, and every business in Utah that has 1 employee or more, they have to purchase workers' compensation, so it's mandatory. And so what workers' compensation does is, if you're injured on the job, it takes care of you. It pays your medical, your lost wages, provides for rehabilitation, or anything you need to get back into the workplace. So that's what it is. So right off the bat, you can probably guess that there's a negative connotation about it, because why? You have to have it. And anytime you tell people you have to have anything, they don't like it, right? They want options and they want a choice. Well, it's not a choice, so they have to have it. So in 1992, this workers' compensation fund had this huge market share. So out of the 60,000 businesses in Utah, this company had 57% of them. So they had a huge market share. It was kind of almost a monopoly. And it was a state-run agency. And very bureaucratic. People had to have insurance with this company. So what happens there is that if you have to have insurance, and the people that are working there they didn't really care about the customers, because they're like, well, they have to come to us anyway, so we don't really have to take care of them. So in 1992, the board of directors of this insurance company hired this man. His name is Lane Summerhays. They hired him to be the CEO of the company. He actually turned the job down 3 times, because he said, this company has the worst reputation on the planet, and why would I ever want to be involved with something like that? But somehow they convinced him. So Lane was the CEO of the company when I started there, and I had been on the agent side, like the broker side. So I was actually selling insurance for agents and brokers, and placing business with insurance companies. And I had just moved to Utah. I'd only been here for about 9 months, and I was working for a large broker called Marsh downtown. And this company contacted me and said, we're starting up a sales organization in our company, and we want you to come and, kind of be part of that. And I said, so I've only been here 9 months, but I haven't heard one good thing about that company. So I think not. There's no way that I want to be involved. And I've never worked for an insurance company anyway. It sounds boring. But they said, no, we really need you to, do this and, come and help us, with this company. So I got there, and my very first day on the job, the company was paying a dividend to its policyholders. So it was owned by the customers. It was a mutual company, and so it was paying a big dividend. So they handed me this big stack of checks, and they said, this will be great. We just want you to, go out and meet these customers. They've probably never met anybody from the company, which I thought was kind of strange to begin with. And, deliver these checks. It'll be great, and you'll, get to know them. And so I came back at noon and to quit my job. I said, so I don't know. I said this to this CEO. I said, I don't know what you guys have done to these customers, but I've been called pretty much everything on the planet, and some things I don't even know what it meant that I was called. And I've heard just horror stories about we're not answering telephone calls, we're not paying claims, we're price gouging people, we're bureaucratic, it just went on. And I said, this isn't an organization that I feel good, being part of. This Lane Summerhays, who I consider to be one of the greatest leaders I've ever met, he put his arm around me and he said, and everything they're saying is right. That is who we are. That is who this company is. He said, but we have to change it. And he said, so if you'll just stay here with me, and together we can make a difference in this company. And because Lane just had such a presence, and because he just seemed like such a wonderful man, is the only reason on the planet that I would just stay and go out and take more abuse day after day from people. So I decided to stay. And Lane said a couple of things that to me are really, really true traits of a leader. Lane was the most humble man ever. Nothing was ever about him. But what he said to me, he said, Peggy, he said, I want you to just do the right thing. Just go out there and do the right thing. Listen to the people and do the right thing. He said, we're not going to worry about the bottom line. This company is almost broke. It had taken out a $40,000 loan. It didn't have enough money really to pay claims, the claims that workers' compensation you pay forever until the person gets back to work. So there's a long tail, and you need to have a lot of surplus to do that. We didn't have a lot of surplus. We probably couldn't have paid claims for very many years. Lane just said, we're not going to worry about the bottom line at all. What we're going to do is take care of the customers. He said, because we owe them that. Which to me was like really just such a great thing to hear, is that he was giving me the authority to just go out there and do the right thing. If somebody felt like we were charging them something that they didn't owe, I had the authority to just say, we're just going to forget about that and we're going to move forward. And I listened, and it was painful. I mean, every day I went home just totally exhausted because I feel like I'd been beat up. But the worst horror stories that I heard, I decided that I was going to invite those people to come to our company. I formed a customer advisory council. I just said, everybody in our company needs to hear what you're saying. We need to know what we're doing wrong, and we need to know how you think we should fix it. So I invited these customers to come and spend a half a day with us. They're busy, they have businesses to run, and they really don't care about this crappy company anyway. But I said, I promise you if you come, the CEO and all the senior leadership in our company will be there. And I promise you, if you'll tell us that our baby's ugly, tell us what's wrong, we'll fix it. We'll work to fix it. And if we can't, we're going to tell you why we can't fix it. So our first customer advisory council, we had 60 small, medium, large-sized businesses that had had these terrible experiences with us. And it was grueling because we ended up with, I think we had 12 pages of items that they said we're screwed up and what they didn't like about our company. Well, we put all of those on as action items, and we promised them that we would respond to every single thing. We might not be able to fix it, but we would respond. And so Lane told all the senior leaders, you are responsible for these things, and you have to answer to them, and if not, you have to answer to me. And so it really started at the top. It started from the leader from Lane, and then the next time that we met with the customers, which was about 6 months later, we addressed every single issue that they had come up with, and we said, we've done this to fix it, or we can't fix it because statutes won't let us, or whatever. But that Customer Advisory Council, and this was in 1995, that Customer Advisory Council is still going today. I mean, we still have those customers, different ones. We keep rotating them, but when somebody has a problem with the company, we bring them in and we ask them why they're unhappy with us and what we can do to fix it. And really, the brilliance is Lane having the vision to see if you run your company for the customer and you do the right thing, you don't have to worry about everything else. The money's going to come. Well, a couple of other things needed to happen. We had a lot of pretty, this was a very bureaucratic, state-run agency, and so we had a lot of employees working for a company that just didn't care. And so this is what Lane said, which I'll never forget it, because I also thought it was brilliant. He said that we have to feed the tigers, ride the horses, and weed the garden. And so Lane's kind of a horse guy, but really what he meant is we've got to take good care of the employees that are the tigers, that are doing the great job. And we've got to get, some of them we're just going to have to ride along and, until they retire or we can help them get better. And then we've got to weed the garden. So the ones that just don't care about our customers or haven't bought into the vision, we got to get rid of them. We got to pick the weeds out of the company. And so that was a pretty grueling process, because anytime that you are talking about people, right, their lives, it was a hard thing to do, but at the same time, it was necessary, because you have to have the right people in place that have the same vision that you do, that want to take care of the customers. So, so we went through that whole process. At that time, I think we had about 80 employees at the company. Remember that we'd taken out a $40,000 loan, right, to try to keep things afloat. Well, the other thing that we did is I worked with an advertising agency, a local advertising agency in town, and I just sat down with them and said, this is what our story, right? So how can we, through advertising medium, make a difference? And so they came up with this campaign, which I really thought was brilliant. I mean, we've had a bazillion campaigns since then, but this one, they actually took an x-ray of a broken bone. It was an actual x-ray of a broken bone, so it was in a package about this big. And we sent it out to the customers, and we just fessed up. We're broken. We're broken. We're unresponsive, we're bureaucratic, we're all the things you've said we are. And because really there was no excuse, and that's what I found when I was out visiting with customers. What are you going to blame it on? You're going to blame it on the computer system, on what? No, you can't. There's nothing to blame it on. All you can do is just say, you're right, we're pretty crappy. So we sent out this campaign, and then we followed it up, I think just a few weeks later, and it's with another x-ray, the exact same bone, that had some pins and screws in it, and just said, these are the things, we've listened to you, and these are the things that we're doing to try to mend this company. And we want you to hang in there with us and, help us become better, because we do care, and we do want to make a difference. At the same time, I was kind of put over this whole sales team that, and we had, probably close to, at that time, maybe 35 to 40,000 customers. And we had nobody really to service them, like go out and visit with them. And so I started putting together a team of individuals that were, you know, marketing people. And really their job wasn't sales. It wasn't to go out and write a whole bunch more business that we could treat crappy like the rest of them. It was to go out there and build relationships with these customers and listen to them and bring all of that feedback back to us and help us to become better. But something that I learned that was brilliant, and I really learned it by accident, is how to build a team, how to build a really strong team that this team really became a family. And how did we do that? It was such a grueling job visiting with these customers and getting beat up every day that once a quarter I said, we're gonna get out of the office for a day and we're gonna go out and we're gonna do a service project. We're gonna just find something. We're gonna go to the neighborhood house and clean up the playground. We're gonna go to Habitat and help them build a house. We're gonna, whatever we can find. We're gonna go serve food, we're gonna work at the food bank, whatever. But we're taking one day, a quarter, and we're out of here. And honestly, it was the most brilliant thing that happened, because when you get out there with this group of individuals, and it's no longer about you anymore, right? You're doing something for somebody else, and you're doing it together. And it built just this incredibly strong team that, we haven't lost one employee out of this group. I mean, because they love what they do. They know that they're empowered to do the right thing and to make a difference. And they also know that part of business is, and part of being in leadership is not just, leading, it's also doing, it's also giving back. It's the kind of the business of giving back is what I call it. And so that's something that, if you get into leadership roles and as you, continue down your paths, that's something really to remember if you want to build a team, is sometimes, just get out of the office and go do something for somebody else. It's really amazing how that builds a team. I wanted to tell you a couple of, I'm not going to talk too much more about that, but I wanted to tell you a couple of other stories about people that I consider to be leaders that you might think, that's strange that you would say that, but how many of you have heard of Johnny the Bagger? Okay. I was given this book by, I don't even remember who. It's called The Simple Truths of Service. And it's this story about Johnny the Bagger. And this is a true story. So Johnny worked in a grocery store, and Johnny was, he had some mental disabilities. So the grocery store hired him to bag groceries. But Johnny decided that he didn't want to just be a bagger like everybody else. He wanted to be a special bagger. So he told his dad, he said, I want to be different, I want to be special. And I want to make a difference in people's lives. And so how can I do that, Dad? So him and Dad brainstormed and decided that what would be really nice is if Johnny could find every day a motivational or inspirational saying. And so what they did is they would get this saying, they'd print it off on the printer, a whole bunch of copies, and Johnny would sit with the scissors and meticulously cut, each one of these little pieces of paper. And then Johnny would go to the grocery store, and when it was time, when he bagged the groceries, he'd put the inspirational little note in there, and he was, so excited about it. Well, one day the owner of the grocery store came in a few weeks later after Johnny had started this, and there were 3 checkers that were checking groceries. And there were 15 people in one line and nobody in the other 2 lines. So the owner goes over to the people and he said, we got 2 other checkers over here. There's no need to wait. And they said, nope, we're good. We're going to stay right here. So the owner was like, what in the world is going on? So he started talking to people as they were leaving the grocery stores and why they were waiting in that line, because that's where Johnny was. And they wanted Johnny's motivational saying of the day. Well, not only did Johnny make a difference in people's lives, but the revenue in this grocery store went up 15% because all of these people were telling their friends and neighbors, you got to go to the grocery store. There's this coolest kid there, and he always has these inspirational, motivational, look what he said today. And so everybody started going to this grocery store. So is Johnny a leader? Johnny certainly made a difference, didn't he, in people's lives? And it was so simple, right, what he did. It was just so simple, but he found a way to differentiate himself. He found a way to make a difference in people's lives. He found a way to be a leader in grocery bagging, right? So I think he is. And if you get a chance, this is just a really fun 20-minute little read here, The Simple Truths of Service, and it's about Johnny the Bagger. And I think there's a video out there about it too, but the other story, I just heard this one the other day, and I thought this was brilliant. So apparently there's this Uber driver out there. I think he's an Uber driver in New York or something. And, there's lots and lots of Uber drivers out there, right? I mean, we're all using them these days. But this Uber driver did the same thing as Johnny. He decided that he wanted to make a difference. He wanted to be the best Uber driver. He wanted to make a difference in people's lives. He said, I have people getting into my car every day, and I have an opportunity to make a difference in their lives. So this Uber driver went out and bought just a regular old notebook, and when somebody would get in the car, he'd toss the notebook, and he'd say, would you mind just writing down something good that happened in your life today? Or, an inspirational saying, or something good, but make it something good. And so everybody, started writing in this book, and then when, pretty soon people would start looking through the book and reading what other people had said, and he had an entire notebook now full of good things that people had to say. So in a world where sometimes we hear all the bad things, his mission was, I want to hear and I want people to share the good things that have happened. And so his plan is to write a book about, his experience as an Uber driver and all of these motivational and good things that people had to say. Is he a leader? Certainly made a difference. He certainly, is a standout with Uber drivers. So I think there's this perception, and we all have it, of what a leader is. And we think about these, Lincolns and Reagans and Bill Gates and, these leaders, but I think that there's leaders right here in this room today, because there's people here that are doing something to differentiate themselves. They're doing something to make a difference in the world and in people's lives. To me, that's a leader. And Lane Summerhays is a leader because why? He wants to do the right thing. That's what he's driven by, 100%, doing the right thing, taking care of the customer, making a difference in the world. So I really feel like there's so many different ways to look at leadership and, leaders, and who do we model ourselves after, and, who do we find out there today that we can say, that's really a leader and that's somebody that I'd like to be like. I think it's becoming more and more difficult, personally. But I think that, to me, finding the person that, has high integrity, that's wanting to do the right thing, and that is making a difference, that's a leader, and that's somebody that I can get behind and be part of. So tell me what your thoughts are about leadership. What do you think it takes? What are the traits of a good leader? Yep.
I think like you talked about, they need to have integrity.
Integrity. That's a big one. Seen a lot of that falling apart these days, right? Yeah, for sure. I mean, and why? Because they're making it about money, about the bottom line, right? Thank you. So not just being up here and the employees are down here, you're all part of a team, of a group. Yeah, that's huge. I mean, that was Lane. You know, I mean, I've worked in companies where the CEO, you know, set up in the big office and you never saw them. You certainly never felt comfortable that you could walk into the office. Lane was everywhere. He was at people's desks. He was greeting people. His door was open. I mean, I'm going to tell you this story because this is also meant just a ton to me. So I had a situation with one of my kids that just kind of headed off the deep end with drugs and just really had a lot of issues in his life. And he had a little boy. So when my grandson was 1.5 years old, just out of the blue, you know, I was, you know, put in charge of, somebody has to take care of this little boy. That's you, Peggy. So, you know, now it's been a long time since I've had kids, and, you know, so I'm just like devastated. I don't know what to do. Like, number one, I mean, I got to get some diapers, right? I need to probably get some clothes. What about daycare? And I have a really busy job. People are depending on me, and so, you know, how am I going to make all of this work? So I went into Lane's office, and I shut the door, and I told Lane the story. And of course, you know, I was in tears, and I'm just like, I don't know what to do because I know that I have a big responsibility here. I don't even know how to find daycare. And so what did Lane do? Lane got up from his desk. He walked around to me, and he put his arms around me, and he said, there is nothing more important in this world than taking care of this young man. He said, we're going to do this together, and we're going to make this work. Well, that meant everything in the world to me, because he could have said, well, you know, figure it out because I need you here, you know, from 8 to 5 and, you know, whatever. You know, we've got a lot of work to do. And so really, you know, would I have followed him to the end of the planet? Yes, absolutely I would have, because that's the kind of person he was and the kind of leader he was. And, you know, I've tried to say, would I have done the same thing if somebody came to me? You know, what would I have said? What would I have done? You know, that's the kind of person, you know, I'd like to be. I'd like to be a leader like that puts people, you know, first before everything else. And I know that all companies probably can't do that, but sometimes when I think about it, it's like, well, why can't they, right? Why can't it be about people? Because if you don't take care of the people in your organization, I mean, who's answering your telephone? Who's speaking to your customers? I mean, you don't want a bunch of unhappy people doing that, right? You want people that feel awesome and great about what they're doing. What else? What other traits do you see in leaders? Yep, adapt to change. Yep, be able to see outside of their box, right? That's great. Yep. Right, so kind of walking the talk, right? I mean, everybody can blab out all the words, right? But how are you actually, can we see that is the kind of person that you are? And being authentic, right? I mean, just being authentic, just being a real person. So that comes back to me too, is like ego and arrogance that you see in a lot of, you know, leaders. That's not very attractive, right? Somebody over here had something. Yep. See, that's such a great thought, because you're absolutely right. You know, they kind of set the bar up here for you and then help you, right, to get there and bring out what you're capable of and the best in you. That is so awesome, you know, to have the ability to do that with people. It's a good one. That is such a great statement too. Admit when you're wrong and being able to listen to other people. So I have so many stories about Lane and other leaders that have done exactly that, you know, and where they've just said, so I thought that was a great idea, but I screwed up, And so now we got to pick up the pieces from that, and you know, which is great because that makes them human and authentic and real. Because I mean, I probably make 10 mistakes every single day of my life. I mean, my dad used to tell me, if you're not making a mistake, you're not doing anything. So make a bunch of mistakes. So, anybody else? Does anybody have any questions about WCF or anything that I've talked about, or my 2 dogs, or anything at all? Well, not anything at all, but most anything at all. Any questions? The town I grew up in, Barstow. Ugh, worst place on the planet. That's what I can tell you about it. No, I mean, Barstow, so my parents, that's another whole story that I would love to tell you sometime, is, you know, kind of my story. It's an interesting one, but my parents grew up in Oklahoma, both of them, and they were raised in sharecropper families. Do you guys know what a sharecropper is? They were like the poorest of poor people, where they work the land for somebody else. I mean, it's not even their land, right? So they pick cotton and stuff. And my husband used to tease my dad that Barstow must be where the mattress flew off the truck when he was driving, because why in the world would anybody, you know, end up in Barstow? But there was a Marine base there. And so my dad was, because of his upbringing and, you know, this poor family that he was raised in, was only able to go to the 8th grade. And so he didn't have, you know, skills and education. And so his first job really was digging the post holes for the fence that ran around the Marine base in Barstow, which has got to be a terrible job because it's blazing hot there. Like, gets like 115 sometimes in the summer. And the only thing that can live are those little horn-toed lizards that run around, right? I mean, Barstow, it was just not a great place to grow up. I mean, there had nothing going for it. You know, it was in the middle of the Mojave Desert and very transient. And the teachers that I had in my life, you know, I mean, if you were a teacher in Barstow, that's because you probably couldn't get a teaching job anywhere else on the planet, because why would you go to Barstow, right? So anyway, it's an interesting story, and I'd love to tell it sometime. Pretty crazy, actually, but thanks for the question. You guys have been so awesome and amazing, and congratulations to you for, you know, putting this effort in and doing what you're doing, and I know you're all going to go out and change the world, and I just appreciate the time that I've gotten to spend with you today, so thank you so much.